Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined by Matt Continetti of the Washington Free Beacon, the Commentary Podcast and Magazine, and of course, head of domestic studies at American Enterprise Institute. Good Wednesday to you, Matt. I have a question for you. Do you remember, are you old enough to recall the name Charles Manat?
No.
Charles Manat became the chairman of the Democratic National Committee in 1981. He served for 4 years. He was then succeeded by Paul Kirk, who served for 4 years, who was then succeeded by Ron Brown, who served for 4 years. 12 years the Democrats were in the presidential desert after the terrible presidency of Jimmy Carter. Do you think they're looking at that now?
They may be facing something similar to that, Hugh, only because the names being floated for that position, chair of the DNC, are as random and anonymous as the name that you asked me if I recognized just a moment ago. So that's a bad sign for the
Yes, it
Democratic
is.
Party. It is a bad sign. It suggests that no one wants that job, or the Democrats really don't know how to respond to Trump's victory. And I would say, too, that when you listen to Kamala Harris's speech in Maryland yesterday, her kind of resurfacing after the election, she doesn't seem to have learned anything either. The message was the same, even the laugh was the same.
Well, and AOC lost to O'Connell yesterday when in the leadership race for the Oversight Committee. So maybe they're not willing to go completely crazy. However, here's my proposition, Matt. Tear it apart. When you have an inflationary presidency like Jimmy Carter and Joe Biden, one that is marked by inflation at home and retreat abroad, with Carter, it was the Iranian Revolution, the Soviets invading Afghanistan, Cubans all over Africa. Under Biden, it's Afghanistan and Ukraine and 10-7. There are stark similarities between Carter and Biden's 4 years. And the memory of disastrous presidencies don't leave in a hurry. Do you think that's the real problem here, is that Biden's been so bad, it's an anchor on the Democratic Party for a long time to come?
Biden has been bad. It has been an anchor on the Democratic Party, an anchor that the Democrats refuse to acknowledge still. Maybe that will change after Biden leaves office. I also think, though, a missing ingredient is success. So you're right. Carter's presidency was terrible, but just as important as the awfulness of Carter's presidency was the success of Ronald Reagan's policy. So Carter created inflation. Reagan, though it was painful in that first term, was able to solve the inflation and provide stable prices with a growing economy. Carter really eroded American deterrence. Reagan restored it through his defense buildup, through his projection of power, and then ultimately through the Strategic Defense Initiative, forcing the Soviets to the negotiating table. So I think that the memory of Biden will linger, especially among younger voters. But I think it's also important, Q, that the Trump administration achieve its goals and not get distracted from its mission. There are two primary goals here. Well, I'll say three. One is securing the border. Two is restoring the economy. And three is restoring American deterrence in the world.
And a lot of that has to do with a rather intangible, restoring some optimism, some being upbeat, looking forward in America. I played the Canadian opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre. I can't say his name. It's going to take me forever. His speech in the Parliament yesterday, because Justin Trudeau may fall today, and last night at 3:30 in the morning, Donald Trump was calling on Canada to become the 51st state again. It's really pretty remarkable how badly Canada is being run right now. But compared to Ronald Reagan, when Ronald Reagan went to his first G7, he was greeted by Prime Minister Suzuki of Japan, Helmut Schmidt in Germany, Pierre Trudeau in Canada, Mitterrand in France, Margaret Thatcher in England, and Giovanni Spaldolini, who I do not remember at all, in Italy. Compare that with Justin Trudeau, Helmut Schultz, Keir Starmer, and Macron. Now, we do have Maloney, and we do like Ashiba, but I mean, Trump's pretty much on his own here, isn't he?
He is, but I would also add he's on his own for now. And whether it's Canada, whether it's France, whether it's Germany, whether it's the UK, where Starmer just won the election, but he's incredibly unpopular already, whether it's South Korea and the mess there. The democratic world seems to be in a period of transition, and the transition leans in one direction. It is a rejection of the left. It is a rejection of the climate policies that have led to deindustrialization and economic stagnation. It's a rejection of the elitism of many of these left wing governments. It's a rejection, I'd say, of kind of the foreign policies of some of these left wing governments as well. And of course, it's a rejection of the migration. And so I think the wave hit the United States here in November, but it's a global wave, and I think that should only concentrate our leaders' minds on the two key goals. One is doing something about the border, and the other is something about inflation. But more important than even getting inflation under control is getting incomes to rise again. And you can't do that, Hugh, with these ridiculous green policies that Western governments have been pursuing for decades.
You anticipated my next comment. This morning, the Financial Times has a story that reads: "The future of America's natural gas export boom has been thrown into doubt after a federal government report found the unbridled expansion would hurt American consumers and global climate goals. A long awaited," again, this is a quote, "a long awaited Department of Energy study." Now, frankly, I've never known of a long awaited Department of Energy study, but this is what the Financial Times said. Released on Tuesday, said that the industry's continued rapid growth, this is our own natural gas, risked driving up domestic fuel prices, increasing greenhouse gas emissions, and supporting China. So Jennifer Granholm has put out a report that says, don't do the liquefied natural gas. It's only going to hurt you, America. Is that the kind of green idiocy you're talking about, Matt?
It's exactly the type of green idiocy I'm talking about, Hugh. Long awaited. I'm sure the green groups, the environmental radicals, were awaiting it because I bet you they had advance notice it was going to happen. And so they were waiting to seize on it to say that we should move away from LNG. We should move away from being an energy exporter and move toward the solar and wind and all of these kind of boondoggles that the left has been pursuing now for years. I think the report is also a reminder of what we avoided in the past election. If Kamala Harris had
Yes.
won the election, Hugh, this report would have been the basis of her second term energy policy. If Harris had won the election, America would be headed down the path of this very same countries where we see such political turbulence and rejection of the status quo. So I think America was uh, dodged a bullet in November. Trump, of course, was hit by a bullet in
Quite
July, but
literally got
America,
hit by a bullet, but dodge
that's
being
right.
killed.
And
Yeah.
well, we dodged a bullet in the election, and so this affords us an opportunity to go down a different path and to continue America's remarkable success when compared with the rest of the world because of our exceptional nature and our exceptional resources and our talent, but also avoid the fate of these other democracies, which just have kind of slid into despondency because of the left wing ideology that we see on display in that report.
Well, I want to read this line again because I want to know how in the world anyone can write it. A long awaited Department of Energy study released on Tuesday said that the industry's continued rapid growth risked driving up domestic fuel prices, increasing greenhouse gas emissions, and supporting China. I don't know how they got there, Matt, but it seems to me they probably said we want to reach the conclusion that LNG means higher prices, helping China and global warming. How do we get there? It doesn't make, how can more domestic production of LNG drive up energy prices? It's
Yeah,
stupid.
you would think that FT would understand, and I'm sure many people there do understand that when you increase supply, cost goes down, price goes down. I mean, it's pretty simple. And look, I think that the incoming Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, the incoming Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum, they understand that. And so the first thing the incoming Trump administration is going to do, Hugh, is take this report that you mentioned and put it into the trash bin. I'm not even sure they're going to recycle it. They're going to dislike
Yeah.
it that much. They'll just put it in the trash bin.
Now, what do you think about Justin Trudeau and Trump's continued teasing of him? I do think he might fall today. If I'm reading this right, Dwayne tells me that his coalition partners don't want to lose the vote of no confidence because they got to go 2 more months to get their pensions. But what do you, I mean? Will it even matter if Pierre Poilievre is the prime minister in Canada?
Oh, I think it will matter. I mean, look, you mentioned Reagan's first G7, and soon after, Trudeau was replaced by Mulroney, and Reagan and
Yep.
Brian Mulroney got along fabulously, right? And so it's good to have the governments of our allies, especially our North American allies, in sync and sharing a similar worldview. So if Trudeau goes and is replaced by the center right leader, then I think it would be a great thing. You know, it's funny. The teasing of Trudeau, at first people thought it was just kind of Trump being humorous and giving us all a reason to laugh. And now, though, it's persisted. And I actually think there is a political dimension to it. I think Trump understands that the more he kind of teases Trudeau, calls him governor, refers to Canada as the great state of Canada, that actually weakens Trudeau's position. And it may help Trump in the end by getting him a leader in the head of Canada who is more open to the MAGA movement and the center right.
He's the great diminisher. Now, Matt, I have a big question. We may have to go into the break about this. AOC lost her chance to be the top oversight committee, but I combine that with this. You've seen the ratings for CNN and MSNBC, right? I heard you talking about them on the commentary podcast yesterday. John marveling, John Podhoretz is marveling that the commentary podcast actually has more listeners than CNN does viewers in the demo. Here's the story from Fox News. Fox News Digital posts best month since 2020, crushing CNN and the New York Times. They had 4.5 billion minutes across all their brands, compared to 1.8 billion minutes for CNN and 1.5 billion for the New York Times. That's a rout. So I'm back with Matt Continetti. Matt, proposition: the media landscape has changed such that Democrats don't realize how this alternative ecosystem, whether it's Fox News Digital, commentary podcast, all of the talk radio world, whether it's Dan Cena, et cetera, it's all wiped out the left's ability to control the narrative. And they're not getting it back soon. True or false?
Oh, absolutely true. And this is the difference that technology makes. You when you look at the numbers of the growth of YouTube, for example, you see that this technology, allowing basically everyone on the planet Earth to become a television producer, has completely changed the face of media. I mean, the young people I know, the young people in my house, for them, television doesn't exist. It's all YouTube, it's all streaming. And I think that is finally catching up with the mainstream culture at large, where people are not looking to cable news to learn what's going on. They're going to YouTube, they're going to podcasts, and they're getting information, but they're also getting it perspective and analysis from people that, on the one hand, they trust, and on the other two, seem more approachable, I think, and seem more relatable, maybe even a little bit more humorous than kind of the stuffed shirts you see on cable and on CNN.
Matt, last question. I had lunch this week with a member of Elite Media, Legacy Media at the very top. He could not believe that the commentary podcast came out 5 days a week and that it was basically an editorial board. And he never heard of the Ruthless podcast. Never heard of it. And he was disbelieving that you folks sit down, the 3 or 4 or 5 of you at commentary, and do an editorial roundtable disbelieving. And I found myself stunned that he didn't know about either commentary or Ruthless. What do you react that way? And I mean a very senior legacy media person.
Yeah. I'm stunned that I do that for 5 hours a week as well. So I don't entirely blame him. But this is what I mean, is that the cost of production of the commentary podcast is very low. I mean, it really is.
What?
It's
You mean they're not paying you millions of dollars?
It's 5 people. I don't have Rachel Maddow's contract, that's for sure. And it's 5 people on Riverside talking for an hour, and yet people love to hear it, and it's
And
just
we
when
want
I'm
more.
sitting talking to
We
you,
want
right? I mean,
more.
so this is the new medium. Podcast, I think, have uh, amplified and changed the shape of radio, but now they're moving into video, and that I think is going to seriously undercut cable and the mainstream media's influence over opinion, especially the opinions of the rising generation of young people. And I think we saw that in the election with the shift among young people toward Donald Trump in 2024.
I got 34% of the young people, Matt.
Right.
34%. I lost by
34%.
30%. I got 34%. You know, he was in command. It's going to be a wild ride for 4 years. But Matt Continetti, thank you for joining me. I look forward to the commentary podcast this morning. Give some thought. Charles Manat, how long will the Democrats be in exile? 12 years? I think that's a reasonable guess. Thank you, Matt Continetti. Follow him at Continetti on X and listen to the commentary podcast. Stay tuned.